Hi, welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. I am Bjorn and I do movies. This is episode 2 of the show and episode 3 of the series. That's confusing as hell, I know, and I should have probably just streamlined, but you know, we're going with it. Welcome back to Writing Deadlands. And I'm just going to jump right into it, no more preamble. The foot deal is still on. And those who watched the previous episode know what this is about, so start subscribing, guys.
Just a reminder, this is part 3. If you haven't seen part 2 at least, I do recommend going back and starting that. That covers the first episode, and you'll need it for the context of this episode. Alright, I'm calling episode 2 the Tombstone Epitaph. I still don't know if I'm saying that right, I don't really care. We are going to open on the interior of the Moon Estate in California. We see young Christine Moon sitting on a fancy couch with her mother. Her mother is quizzing her on the phases of the moon. We hear young Christine Moon say, "Full moon." And Elizabeth, her mother, says, "That's right." And tonight, Christine says, "Waxing crescent." Elizabeth says, "Correct," which means? And young Christine replies, "The stone's powers are low." Her mother says, "Right again." Christine's gonna ask, "Mother, what does the stone do? You've never said." "A great many things. Once it fed our people and gave them protection. Now it keeps us safe. Without the heart of darkness, we and the people of this land would be cursed by evil. This stone is our legacy and our future. Someday it will be yours." She goes to the fireplace and picks up the gem, which is set on like a mantle, like a stand, I guess. It's a dark purple color, and it's covered in a metal apparatus that kind of turns. It's got runes on it. It glows when her mother touches it. Suddenly, the earth begins to shake. At first a tiny amount, then a lot. Christine, in a panicked voice, is going to go, "Is this the power of the stone?" Her mother's going to say, "No, sweetie, this is..." She's cut off as a huge fissure opens up in the middle of the house. The earth keeps shaking and the house begins to rip itself apart. Christine Moon's mother falls into the pit with the stone in hand. The house shifts again and begins to slide. Christine falls and starts to slide towards the pit. She manages to grab the edge of the cliff and hold on. She looks down, and in the darkness, we see it sort of swirl, almost as if it's alive. And we see red eyes looking back at her from inside the pit. Just as Christine looks like she'll fall, we see a younger Hitoshi grab her arm and pull her to safety. They run through the house, dodging falling equipment and barely avoiding as the earth still shakes. What you're seeing, by the way, is the quake of '68. I think that should be pretty self-explanatory. As they leave the house, we zoom out to see giant fissures in the earth opening up as the maze begins to form. And then we're going to cut to the train. We see John asleep in his seat. Christine watches him intently. A slight smile lights her face and vanishes just as quickly. The train hits a bump and John wakes up. He looks out the window. "Where are we?" Christine's gonna say, "Somewhere in Arizona. It won't be long now." John will say, "It'll be good to get off this damn train. I've never liked these things." Christine says, "Oh, I remember. God, I thought you were going to shoot me back in Deadwood." "I almost did. We hadn't been traveling together long, and you thought a train ride across the country was a grand idea. You had me at wit's end by the end of that week. Oh, like you were so innocent. What about that time in Comfort when you cheated in cards against the sheriff? You nearly earned us both a hanging." John's gonna say, "I'll admit that wasn't my best showing. Honestly, I didn't even need to cheat. He was really bad at cards." Christine's gonna kind of smile and say, "We were wild back then." John will say, "We were." A silence is gonna pass over them, and then John will ask, "Has anyone shot that bastard Hitoshi yet?" Christine's gonna say, "No." John's gonna say, "I may just have to solve that little problem." Christine will tell him not to joke about it, and John will say, "Don't tell me he's in Tombstone." Christine says she won't tell him. John gets pissed and says, "Oh hell, you had to bring him along?" Christine's gonna say he has many useful skills. John's gonna laugh. "He fights with the sword. He's a relic of a different time and place." Christine's gonna just say, "Try to keep the peace. We need all the help we can get." John's gonna groan and lean back in his seat. We're gonna cut to the train station in Tombstone. We'll see the train pull in. As we follow it, the camera passes Hitoshi. We see the sword at his waist. Men and women begin to exit the train. We see John and Christine leave with them. Christine makes her way to Hitoshi when she spots him. She hugs him, and then he whispers in her ear, "I told you he would come." They break the hug as John approaches. John looks Hitoshi up and down. "I have to admit, even after meeting the guardian angels, you're still the last person on the planet I wanted to see." Hitoshi's gonna say, "I see you're still an asshole." John will reply, "I reckon I am. Judging by the company you keep, I also reckon you like assholes." Christine snorts and John walks past Hitoshi. "Let's just get this done. Where's the epitaph?" Hitoshi's gonna say, Down the main street. Christine raises an eyebrow as John makes his way down the road. Christine and Hitoshi follow behind. Hitoshi's gonna say, I see he's still friendly. Christine's gonna say, give him a break. He's had a rough week. Hitoshi says, he mentioned guardian angels. They came for him in Kansas. Killed a friend of his. We got onto the train and escaped until they sent monsters after. Hitoshi's gonna say, I should have gone with you. Christine says, we're fine. It worked out. Hitoshi replies, these angels are dangerous. We're going into the lion's den. Christine will say, we've done it before. We see John stop and approach a 2-story wooden building. A wooden sign reading the tombstone epitaph hangs on its front. John tries the door and finds it locked. He knocks. Hello? Anyone there? No one answers. John checks the windows and sees they've been boarded up from the inside. Christine says, I guess no one's here. John says, someone's in there. I saw the light go out under the door when I knocked. John knocks again. No answer. Well, I tried it. Nice. He kicks down the door. It smashes open. John enters the building and Christine and Hitoshi follow. We're going to cut to Albuquerque. We'll see the guardian angels exit a train. The first guardian angel says, are you sure it's here? And the second says, I feel its pull. It's here. They walk forward until they're near the center of the town. One of the angels bends over and picks up a bone from the floor. We see it's the same bone that came from the bloody ones in the last episode. Guardian Angel 1 says, the runes are gone. Guardian Angel 2 says, they killed it. These are no ordinary devils. Their first will say, to Tombstone then. The second will agree. To Tombstone. We're going to cut to the Tombstone epitaph. We'll see John and the others searching the building. They see all sorts of odd things. Strange creatures instead of glass jars. Weird stones with odd symbols carved on them. You know, just general weird stuff. Maybe some fun references to the game. I'm not really going to stop and think about everything they're going to see because it would just, take a lot of time that we don't really have. That would be a set designer's job. As they search, they find no one in the entire building. It's empty, eerily. John says, whoever is here, they're hiding. After a bit of searching, they find a shut closet door. John studies it and then kind of nods to himself. He gestures to Hitoshi, who also nods. He quietly opens the door and finds a gun pointed at his face. A small man with black hair and glasses holds a double-barrel shotgun right to his head. He doesn't fire. Instead, he looks past John, at Christine and Hitoshi. You folk don't look like angels. Who are you? Lacey says. This is none other than Lacey O'Malley, the head writer for the Tombstone Epitaph and a huge character in the Deadlands game. Basically everything you read in the manuals is from this guy's writing. Lacey's going to say, you folk don't look like angels. Who are you? Christine's going to say, because we're not. We're just curious readers of your paper. John will say, you are the writer of the Tombstone Epitaph, correct? Lacey says, if I am. John says, then we're friends who just want some information. Lacey slowly lowers the gun. What kind of information do you want? Christine says, you wrote about the lost angels, about a ritual involving a magic stone. So I did. We just want to know your source. We'd like to ask him about the stone. It's very important. Lacey puts the gun to his side. I'm afraid you're too late. She's dead. John's gonna say, oh hell. Christine will say, what happened? Lacey's gonna say, they found out she was talking to me and killed her dead. She was a good person and they murdered her. But what she knew, I know. Christine says, and what's that? And Lacey says, their dirty secret. I can tell you. I know it. John says, go on and say it. Lacey says, I need assurances first. There are men who are coming to kill me. Bad men, the dangerous sort. I'm not much of a fighter, but you folk have that look. Keep me alive through the night and get me out of Tombstone. I'll tell you everything I know. John says, done. Who are we dealing with? Lacey says, mercenaries, hired by the angels, I think. They arrived a week ago. The sheriff kept them off me at first, but more kept coming. Yesterday they put lead in him. I'll be a dead man tonight, maybe even sooner. Hitoshi's gonna ask, how many of them are there? Lacey will say, I don't know. At least 12, probably more. Christine says, tell us what you know and we'll handle the mercenaries when they come. Lacey says, I can do that. The angels, they're hiding something weird in their citadel. My source, Kasana, saw them. And before he can finish, a young boy bursts through the front door. He runs into the room. Mr. O'Malley, they're coming. Just rode into town, my pa saw. The boy stops and eyes John and Hitoshi nervously. Lacey says, how long ago? Lacey says, how long ago? Boy says, only a few minutes. I ran as fast as I could. Lacey's gonna say, thank you, Owen. Take the back door out. The little boy nods and runs straight for the back. John makes straight for the front door. He walks outside just as 6 men on horseback ride up. 2 are holding rifles, the rest clearly have revolvers at their waist. Their leader rears his horse and then stares John down. He says, "Who are you, the new sheriff? I don't see a badge." John says, "No, I ain't the law-abiding type." Mercenary leader says, "Then leave. You got no business here." John says, "I'm an active reader of the paper. I don't want to see it shut down. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The mercenary leader laughs. "A reader, huh? I don't believe that." John says, "Believe what you will. I'm going to stay right here." Mercenary leader says, "We just want the newsman. Leave, and the rest of you can have your lives." John stares him down. "I already told you, I'm not moving. You don't frighten me, boy." He lets one of his hands slide down to his gun. He slides the other to his cards. Other men begin to exit from houses around the epitaph. Many are holding rifles or handguns. They don't look too pleased with the mercenaries who have just killed their sheriff. The mercenary leader smiles and moves his own hand away from his gun. "Think on it. We'll be back tonight. If you ain't here and that newsman is, we won't have a problem. But stay and know you'll die." John laughs. "I'll extend the same offer. Come tonight and know you'll die, friend." The mercenary smiles. "Where did that newsman find somebody like you? You seem like one tough bastard. I'll double whatever he's paying." John says he's not interested. The mercenary shrugs, then turns around. He whistles his men to leave. They all saunter off as John watches. The armed men in the doorway go back to their houses. John goes back inside the epitaph. Lacey says, You made them leave." John says, "So I did, but they'll return. You better hope we're still here when they do." Christine says, "I think you have a promise to fulfill, Mr. O'Malley." He says, "Please call me Lacey, and I'll tell you what you want to know." Christine says, "The Lost Angels. Tell me everything you know." And Lacey's going to do just that. He says, "I've always wrote about the weird. I've been out in these Deadlands more than most, and I've seen things that ain't right. Lost Angels have been on my mind for a while. I'd heard stories of miracles like I imagine y'all have. I'd also heard of their leader fighting off devils and demons. In all my years, I've never seen a demon. So I went to the maze and made it to the city of the Lost Angels." "You've been before?" Christine asks. "Twice now," Lacey says. "It was the first time that I met my contract. A woman by the name of Cassandra Larry. She worked as a cook for the Guardian Angels and Ezekiel Grimm himself. After I got to know her, she started telling me things. The more she spoke, the more I realized the angels were hiding something. She told me of a room the workers weren't allowed to enter, with doors made of steel. She said it was powered by a ghost rock machine unlike anything she'd ever seen. What's stranger, she swore she'd see men go in and not return for days. They always came back with something, often large amounts of food, sometimes mysterious gold and jewels." "Who'd go in?" Christine asks. "She said it was only Grimm and some of his closest angels. She was sure they were hiding something dark. It was her thinking that they were forging some kind of deal with the devil, or some other such evil. I'm not so sure. I've seen the angels perform miracles from God. Hell, I interviewed damn near 200 people who swore up and down that Grimm banished demons before their eyes. I think he's hiding something, but I don't think it's the devil. I heard some stories myself. Rumbles of a magic stone that could grant powerful miracles from God." Hitoshi lets out a laugh. "It's not from God. It's from France." Christine says, "It has to be the Heart of Darkness. Grimm has locked it away in that safe." Lacey says, "The Heart of Darkness?" And Christine replies, "It was an heirloom in my family. It was a gem my parents always said was magic. I lost it in the maze years ago. Grimm must have found it. And now I know where I can find it." Lacey says, "You're thinking of stealing it." Christine says, "It wouldn't be stealing. It belongs to me. It's my birthright." Lacey says, "It's suicide. At least 20 angels are in the Citadel at all times. The city is even more dangerous than that these days." John asks, "Dangerous how?" Macy says, "They don't advertise it, but when Grimm banished those demons, he missed a few. Folk go missing or turn up as mangled corpses. People see them too. Dark shadows with monstrous shapes patrolling the streets at night. If you ain't careful in that city, you're liable to end up dead." "You said your source was killed. How'd it happen?" Macy says, "I don't know. I've been exchanging letters with her. We plan to meet on my next visit. But in the week leading up to my travels, I stopped hearing from her. I found out why when I arrived. They hung her up in the square as a devil worshipper. I didn't even stay the night. And it was a good thing too. The angels had seen my article, and they weren't fond of it. They would have killed me had I stayed. And that's how I knew I was onto something. Cassandra was a good person. I know she wasn't a devil worshipper. John says, I have similar grievances with the angels. Christine says, Lacey, you hate them. Come with us. You know your way through the city. You have contacts there. You can help us get in and help us steal the stone. Don't you want to hit them where it hurts? Lacey says, I've seen some evil in my day. Been to a lot of bad places in the West. But these angels, they're something different. I shouldn't have messed with them. I won't go back to that city. I know more about the angels. Get me the hell out of Tombstone and I'll tell you everything. Christine lets out an exasperated sigh. She gets up and walks away to the other room. John says, don't take it personally. She acts that way with everyone. He gets up and follows Christine. Only Hitoshi and Lacey are left in the room. Hitoshi kind of looks around awkwardly, then says, that thing you wrote about the killer tumbleweeds. That's not true, is it? Lacey says, I've seen them in the Deadlands. Some type of spider or other such insect. I don't like spiders. They hunt the cowards away, with such refuge and traps. Lacey kind of looks at him confused and says, I see. We're going to cut to John and Christine in the other room. John enters the room, flipping a coin up into the air and catching it. Christine says, can you deny it now, John? I'll admit it's compelling, but I don't like it. I feel like we're missing something here. Christine nods. I agree. I especially don't like that business with the demons. You know a thing or two about them. John nods. Mostly how to gamble with them. I can tell you how they make me feel. Whenever I play a game against them, a sense of evil washes over me, like my opponent is just waiting to get at my soul. A demon manifested in our world would be like a living nightmare. Christine says, a living nightmare can be killed, else it wouldn't be living. John shakes his head. I'm not so sure. You don't have to do this, you know. You can just let this be. Christine says, you're wrong. I have to do it. I owe it to my mother to restore our family purpose. I know I say it a lot, but it's everything to me. If I don't do this, I'll never live a normal life, John. You know my curse. That stone could fix me. John looks at her. And what does a normal life look like for you? Christine doesn't answer. John sighs with frustration, then flips the coin once more. Christine catches it before it can land. She studies it. A union coin. Are these worth much down here? John says, they can be, to the right seller. Christine says, sounds to me like you chose the wrong side. They say the union is losing. John says, I always choose the underdog. People never see someone they think is beneath them coming until it's too late. In my experience, the little guy gets crushed underfoot. John says, I know you well enough to know you don't mean that. Christine says, I guess you do. I should warn you, it's my night. John asks her, you want me to take care of it? No. No, Christine says. I'll just keep to myself tonight. John asks, are you sure that's wise? Christine says, you will not draw a card. You've drawn too damn many. John says, all right, I won't draw. Christine says, that thing I gave you on our first date, do you still have it? John clutches at his necklace. I do, but I won't use it. You shouldn't have to. I'm going to get away from the town. If it's all the same, stay inside if you can. John says, I will. Christine nods and moves for the door. She walks past Hitoshi and Lacey, who are now studying the dead body of a tumblebleed. This is my way of slipping a tumblebleed in. These are one of my favorite monsters from the game. We're going to get to see another one of my all-time favorites in this later. I just think these things are really silly and fun, so I really wanted to put one in, and I couldn't figure out a way to make one not goofy in like an actual combat setting, so this is how I came up with doing it without wrecking the tone. Lacey's going to ask, where's she going? John's going to say, out for a few things. She'll be back soon. John settles next to where Hitoshi is. Lacey gets up to go watch Christine leave from the window. Hitoshi turns to John after he's gone. He says, I'm going to be honest with you, John. I don't like you. John's going to smile and say, I assure you the feeling is mutual. Hitoshi will say, that being said, Christine cares for you, more than even you know. She is still in love with you. John's going to say, I think you're wrong about that. And Hitoshi will say, I'm not. I see it in her eyes when she looks at you. I see it in yours too. You can lie and try to hide it, but you're in love with her. Why else would you come all the way to Tombstone? John's going to ask, what are you getting at? He'll say, don't die, John. I might not like you, but she does. If something were to happen to you on this trip, she'd blame herself. The one thing we have in common is that we both care for her. I don't want to see her hurt, and I know you feel the same. John says, well, you're in luck. I don't plan on dying. Hitoshi says, good, because if you do, I'll kick your ass in hell. John smiles and actually laughs a little. Hitoshi, If I didn't know you better, I'd swear that was a joke. Lacey returns, and we see a time lapse of the three of them in the room. It stops when we see Lacey showing them a blood wire inside of another one of his glass tubes. Lacey says, "Nasty thing. Looks like barbed wire to hide along fences. These critters were causing all sorts of violence amongst the cowboys. The wounds they inflicted look like bullet holes. It took my article to soothe some tension. Hell, these things must have started at least 10 range wars." John asks, "What is it really?" Lacey says, "That's the mystery. A creature that looks like a human fence shouldn't exist at all. We haven't been around long enough to change a creature like that. Yet it's here, a mystery indeed." Suddenly the sound of hooves fill the room. We hear shouts and whoops from outside. We hear the mercenary leader yell, "Newsman, come on out. If you don't, we'll burn the place down with you in it." John says, "Looks like our friends have come back." He pulls the pistol from his holster. "I'm gonna go say hello." He heads upstairs and cracks one of the windows. He sticks his gun out and fires, killing one of the mercenaries. He ducks back around the corner just as a hail of gunfire fills the room. Mercenary yells, "Hold your fire. You're just wasting bullets on wood." "I tried to play nice, newsman." He pulls out a Molotov cocktail and lights it with a match. He says, "Surround the building. Shoot anyone who comes out." His men start to move around back. The mercenary throws the Molotov and ignites the building in flames. John says, "Oh, hell." He starts to run downstairs as smoke fills the house. He finds Hitoshi and Lacey downstairs. John says, "We're in trouble." Hitoshi says, "I know. They've already surrounded us." John says, "We don't have a choice. We'll have to fight our way out." Hitoshi nods. "We don't have time to waste." They approach the back door as the fire spreads in the house behind them. We can hear Lacey muttering nervously to himself. Hitoshi puts an ear against the wall and smiles. He pulls his sword from his sheath and then carefully sticks it straight through the wall. We hear a gurgling scream. When Hitoshi pulls his blade free, it's coated in blood. John quickly peeks out the black window. He sees two more men. He fires a shot, killing one. Bullets begin to rip through the side of the building again. John says, "This was much easier when I could just draw a card." Hitoshi says, "You still could." "I don't need the cards for these sorts. I just need to kill time and keep them shooting." John peeks around the doorway and fires at another approaching mercenary. "For what?" "With that racket they're making, it won't be long till she hears." Hitoshi laughs with sudden understanding. "You're an evil bastard, John." Lacey says, "Not to tell you your craft, this building is on fire and this wall won't be covered for long. I don't think we have time to wait for whatever's coming." John says, "You're right about that, Lacey. That's why I got a special surprise for him." When I say so, you both run for them rocks over there. He gestures with his gun, then pulls dynamite from his bag. We see a mischievous smile creep across his face. He says, "I've always wanted to try this." He lights the dynamite's fuse on the flaming house, throws it out the door towards the bad guys. "Run, now, to the rock!" All three men run. We see several of the mercenaries trying to escape the dynamite, but it's too late. A huge explosion rips across them. We see like limbs blowing off. We'll get really graphic here. We hear the screams of men. Bullets fly across the dirt as John and the others try to make it to the rocks. Just as they slide behind the rock pillar, we hear the distant howling of a wolf. Lacey turns to see his house burning in flames against the full moon. He looks sad and says, "This place was my legacy." He doesn't have time to be sad, though. The mercenary leader strolls into sight with more of his men. He says, "Enough of this farce. You've lost, gunslinger. Come out and give us the newsman, and we'll spare you." "Hell, I'll hire you. I'll need more men after this." John says, "I haven't lost. You just haven't realized it yet." A silence falls over the men, and we hear the wolf howl again. The mercenary leader asks, "Do you really want to die that badly?" "Fine, I'll put you in the dirt myself." Suddenly, one of the mercenaries screams and vanishes. The leader turns back in time just to see one of his men jerked into the darkness. A dark creature slowly lumbers into the moonlight. It's shot in shadow, so you can't really see what it is. It leaps forward and grabs another man, ripping him in two. The mercenaries begin to fire on it, but whatever it is, it keeps moving towards man after man, ripping them apart in really gory, fun, spectacular fashion. Soon, half the mercenaries are killed. We see John rip the glass vial off his necklace. He lets a silver bullet fall into his hand. He carefully loads it into his gun. "What is that thing?" Macy says, watching the creature. "Salvation, friend," John says. "These bastards chose the wrong night for a fight, and now they're fucked." We see the last of the mercenaries firing at the monster. It's no use. It keeps ripping through them, spilling blood and guts everywhere. At last, only the leader is left. He puts 3 pistol rounds into the beast. It lopes up to him and takes his head off with one swipe of its claws. The creature howls in victory, and for the first time we see it silhouetted against the full moon. It's a werewolf. Blood drips from its claws and its fur is soaked red. It starts to eat one of the bodies, then stops and smells the air. It looks towards the rocks and lets out a howl. John steps out from behind the rocks. He tosses his gun to Lacey. "If I die, shoot it with that and don't miss." The werewolf begins to run towards John. He stops and waits to greet it as he pulls a card from his deck. We see it's a Queen of Hearts. Green light surrounds John. The werewolf almost reaches him, then finds itself surrounded in the light as well. It lets out a howl-like shriek and begins to cower back. The werewolf slowly turns back into a human under the green light of the Queen of Hearts. Christine looks up at John. She's naked. John pulls off his duster and wraps it around her. He smiles and says, "You've got to stop meeting like this." Christine laughs and hugs him. She whispers in his ear, "I told you not to draw." And John says, "I didn't listen." Christine says, "I can see that. Thank you, John." He says, "I should be thanking you." Christine asks why. He says, "Because you took care of our new friends back there." He gestures towards the dead mercenaries. Christine says, "I did that?" John says, "Yeah, and it's a good thing too. They about had us." Lacey steps out from behind the rocks. "You're a werewolf," he says. John says, "Nothing slips by you, huh?" Christine says, "It's my family's curse. We've had it for generations. When the moon is full, I transform. Only John here can stop me." Lacey says, "I didn't think werewolves were real. I need to write an article." Itoshi laughs and says, "You have funny priorities, Lacey." Lacey says, "I'm not the one who wants to go to the maze." John smiles and says, "Actually, I think you are. You asked us to get you out of Tombstone. That's exactly what I'm going to do. You get to go with us to the city of the Lost Angels, unless you want to stay here." Lacey goes still. "With the werewolf?" Christine says, "The werewolf has a name." John says, "It'll be fine. We got a while till there's another full moon. Plenty of time." Christine says, 27 days. John says, "See, Lacey? 27 days of safety." We see Lacey weighing his options in his head. He has no choice. He has to go with them or face death. His face kind of turns pale and he says, "Oh, hell." The camera pulls out from them until we see a man in an eye patch and a duster watching them. As the camera passes, he turns to leave. Cut the credits as we hear the song "Howling for You" by the Black Keys play. So a lot happened in this episode. But also, not a lot happened. Like, it was mostly an action-oriented episode. Our next one is going to be the longest episode. I think it's going to clock in around an hour when I record the whole thing. I haven't actually written most of it yet, so we'll have to wait and see. A couple big reveals in this episode. Of course, Christine Moon is a werewolf. I'm sure a lot of you picked up on this. I had been dropping hints about it pretty unsubtly throughout the whole first 2 episodes. Her name is literally Christine Moon, so you get what you pay for in the tin. John gets some fun moments to shine here. We get a lot of great action. We get more of Hitoshi, who didn't really get much to do in the first episode. He's going to get a lot more to do going forward, as we get a lot of character development. And of course, we get introduced to Lacey O'Malley, who's a classic Deadlands character. He's been in the game for as long as it's existed. So I was like, it was a no-brainer for me putting him in this series. And he'll get some more moments to shine as well. And we get introduced to a mysterious new character who watches them at the end. I don't know where that's going, so y'all are going to have to tune into the next episode to find out.
Hey, thanks for watching, folks. I'm very serious about the foot thing. That is still on the table, so subscribe, I guess. I just want to thank everyone again for all the love I'm getting on this channel. It means a lot to me, and so yeah, hope to see y'all in the next one.